Hello and welcome, dear viewers. This is our weekly edition, ATV Special, and I am Zalalem Ibeltal, producer of the program. In today's ATV Special program, we're going to assess the latest political development in Ethiopia. A week before, the federal government of Ethiopia has started offensive attack against TPLF junta in Tigray regional state. Prime Minister of Ethiopia, His Excellency Dr. Abiy Ahmed, said war cannot be avoided by one side, and Prime Minister Abiy accuses TPLF junta for instigating conflict by attacking a military camp, a camp which has been safeguarding the people of Tigray for the last 20 years. Chair of TPLF, Dr. Debretsion Gebremichael, on his part said, "This is a war which we are conducting to preserve our existence." Dear viewers, just little information as a background. TPLF was the most influential party in the last 3 decades. In fact, TPLF was the dominant party in the coalition of EPRDF, a coalition which has ruled Ethiopia for the last 27 years or so. However, due to a serious crackdown on human democratic rights, corruption, economic injustice, marginalization, and other problems, the people of Ethiopia opposed, strongly and consistently opposed EPRDF, and finally forced the party to reform itself. Therefore, the current Prime Minister, the ongoing Prime Minister, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, the most closely watched leader in Africa, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, has come to power following this reform. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has made series of political and economic reforms since he came to power in April 2018. However, his reform has faced some serious challenge, and many see TPLF, Tigray People Liberation Front, as one of his strongest challenge. Dear viewers, today's ATV Special will circumnavigate around this issue. Please do stay with us. So, joining me is Mr. Antene Tesfaun, who is lecturer of political science and international relations in the University of Bahar Dar. Mr. Antene, big welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Let's start the talk by looking at the basic difference between TPLF, Tigray People Liberation Front, and the federal government of Ethiopia, because I think this is a very critical issue that may pave the way for our forthcoming discussion. What is the basic dispute between TPLF and the federal government of Ethiopia?
Okay. Well, thank you for having me to discuss such an important issue that is having serious repercussions, that will be having a serious repercussion to our country and to the region. Well, before delving into discussing the disputes between the two, I think it's important to try to see the differences between these two groups.
Exactly.
The two groups, or the actors in this ongoing military engagement or conflict, are the federal government on the one hand, and the TPLF as a group on the other. And so it is better to start by looking at how these two groups, the difference between these two groups. The first is the individual level. From the individual level of analysis, when you see it, you find the leader of the federal government, the Prime Minister, and the collective leadership of the TPLF group, right? So when you see them, it seems they have stark differences between each other in with regard to current circumstances or the current state they are in. The Prime Minister, or the leader of the federal government, is the result. He came into power, as you have mentioned in your opening. He is the result of the massive lengthy, probably 2-3 years, lengthy protest against the rule of the TPLF. And so that lengthy protest was culminated by the ascension to power of the Prime Minister, and therefore he is mandated to reform. He is mandated to change the way things have been done during the TPLF-led EPRDF regime. And so whatever he is doing, most of the things he is doing now, he has been justifying, and people have been looking forward to what he was doing, because they were supposed to be the reason d'etre, the rationale for his ascension to power. And so he's supposed to be a reformer, and he has shown that somehow. And at this particular time, it seems as a person, he has a historic responsibility.
Historic responsibility.
Yes, it is a historic responsibility to maintain the sovereignty of the country, the territorial integrity of the country, and therefore those actions he has been taking need to be seen from that angle. Or I think this historic responsibility that he has a huge deal to do with his decision-making process, I would say, as a person, as a leader. And from what we have seen, it seems that the Prime Minister, as a person, and in his circle, his inner circle, it seems he's intent on trying to usher a new beginning. Though not radical, he's not trying to do some radical change. He's not trying to reform the federal structure. He's not trying to deal with constitutional change or even amendments.
Fundamental change.
Yeah, he has made that clear, that he's not going to engage in those fundamental reform agendas or fundamental change.
Sure.
But it seems he is trying to pave a new path than what has been under the TPLF regime. And one of those things is his seemingly interest, or it seems he is hell-bent on trying to create a strong central government or federal government. So far he has not managed to do so, and people have been against and for this proposition of having a strong federal government. On the one hand, those who say this strong central government will create fertile ground for a personal dictatorship or authoritarian rule. On the other hand, and I think this camp, or the other camp, is many in number, is those who say let's have a strong central government that can uphold rule of law, that can be feared, that can be respected by the different factions, the different groups that have been doing some unspeakable acts of violence, usually against civilians. So it seems the person in the Prime Minister has that intention of creating a strong central government. On the other hand, the TPLF as a group, mainly they do collective decisions, and mainly the old guard in the TPLF, it seems they are nostalgic to probably what they call the good old days, in the times when they were the makers and breakers of the Ethiopian government in the Ethiopian society, the times when they were at the helm of everything. And that nostalgia, I think, is important factor in shaping their behavior and in shaping their decision-making processes. In addition, that's, I think, why they have become uncompromising. From what has been done, from the protests against the TPLF, the 3-year-long protests in which many people died, many youths, young people, different calamities have happened in those days of the protest. But nothing has happened to the TPLF leaders as a group, as a leader. Nobody was kept accountable nobody was brought to justice.
Yeah.
I mean, at least for those few who have been engaged in grand corruption schemes. Most of the political leaders of the TPLF that have been in power when the protests were going on, that have been responding to the protests violently, they have been left untouched.
Yeah,
right?
Most of the suspects,
most of those people
were not brought to justice.
Nobody was brought to justice, and that should have been taken as an olive branch for peace. Right? When you say, okay, just be as you are, and let's move forward. But it seems the TPLF leaders remain uncompromising because they keep to be nostalgic about the past, and to an extent they seem to be overly confident about their military capabilities, to the extent that they seem to be delusional in thinking or in mistakenly transferring the past into the future. They, in their talks, you see that we have done this and that 30, 40 years ago, so it is in us to repeat it or to do it again. Things have changed a lot, right? So I don't believe, I'm not a soldier, I'm not a military person, but I don't think there are those fertile grounds for the success of the TPLF 20, 30 years ago that are not present now. So that's why I say delusional. Yeah. Plus, this TPLF group's decision is heavily impacted by the strong and entrenched economic and financial interests it has throughout the country. Right? Everywhere the members of the TPLF leadership, I would say, and some in their circle have interests in many different parts of the country. It's not a crime to have economic interests, I would say, but it would be a crime to try to keep those interests through violent means. Right? Yeah, when you try to maintain your economic interests or exercise or further your economic interests using violent means, that becomes criminal. Instead of becoming integral part of the reform process that everybody has been looking forward, including many of the people whom the TPLF claims to represent. The TPLF remained to be outside, and instead of force for the solution, it remained to be a force for destruction. I mean, it seems like the decision is also influenced by the need to prove the point that they have been making for a long time, saying if we are not there, the Ethiopian state is in a deep crisis. That is a self-fulfilling cause, right? If you are the one who is doing the destabilization, then you don't have the right to cry about the destabilization itself, right? It is an oxymoron, but it's ironic, right? When you are actively engaging in those violent maneuvers or in those manipulations of different sectors of society to engage in violent activities, and at the same time you decry the violence and the destabilization.
Now the federal government is in open military operation against TPLF junta in Tigray regional state. But don't you think that do you think that the federal government of Ethiopia has exhaustively used all possibilities of negotiation? Do you think?
Well, negotiation is indeed one, and it should be the primary tool for resolving issues or conflicts between any party. And personally, I am an ardent, staunch proponent of giving primacy to negotiations. And I believe the federal government has tried to negotiate with the TPLF as a group. There have been moves towards sending people to start the negotiation process. For instance, last time we have seen elders who tried to start the talk between the two, but they were not successful because the TPLF did not engage them as they wanted to. And before that, I think there were these Mothers for Peace initiative who have been going in different parts of the country trying to broker peace between the incumbent government and the different factions that have picked up arms. And they also went to the TPLF. I don't think they were given a receiving hand from the TPLF. And so to negotiate, you need to clearly set your interests, right? What are the interests, what are the issues that you are going to negotiate on? On the one hand, the TPLF is ousted from power by the protests from all over Ethiopia, right? People in Ethiopia from all over, from the four corners, they protested against the TPLF-led regime, and that's how it was ousted from power. And in the process, the TPLF did some serious violations of human rights, some serious civil rights violations. But nobody was, like I said, nobody was brought to justice. And that was supposed to be part of the negotiating issue. It was a bargaining chip. However, in that case, the Ethiopian people or the federal government has lost that bargaining chip because it was no more in control or of this group. And so now they are in their own. And so now they have come up with their own demands beyond the question of the Ethiopian people. In addition to not being accountable for what you have done, now you are asking for more and more and more. That keeps going up and up. And then finally, I think what broke the camel's back is the declaration of the federal government as illegal, given because they conducted an election in which they won 100% once again for the 6th time in their existence. They declared the federal government illegal, and they declared there is no federal government. I don't think there would be negotiation when you disrecognize or when you refuse to recognize the other party. Right? The federal government at first said, well, as long as the other party won this sham election, we're fine. They need to do it again next year when the national elections are going to be conducted, but other than that, it's fine. That's what I heard about the federal government's response to the election. But then, as soon as they conduct the election, they started saying there is no federal government now. That means they refused to recognize the federal government.
The very existence of the government.
Recognition of the other party is the first and the very important step in negotiation. So, who are they going to negotiate with if they say there is no central government, right? So that is how it is now. However, there is one very important point I need to make. In terms of the federal government's view, I see a caveat in its understanding or in how the federal government has framed the issue. The federal government, I think it's the Prime Minister in his speech, in his statement, he said the conflict is between the federal government and factions in the TPLF. He did not.
What he said with TPLF junta.
That means a few
the whole
people, within criminal elements within the TPLF. That means he did not antagonize or target the TPLF wholesale. There are a few people that are targeted. And the way he framed it is not a conflict per se, it is the federal government's effort to uphold rule of law. Right? Because it has been a long time since those criminal activities have been committed, although they have been, they kept committing similar acts. It seems the effort of upholding rule of law doesn't seem to have too much credence at this time, because to some extent it came late. It came later, and so there is a caveat, that particular caveat, and that gives a chance for negotiation. However, that negotiation will happen when and if the other members of the TPLF can oust these criminal elements as designated by the Prime Minister and the federal government. They are designated criminal elements, but still they are at the top of the TPLF. If the TPLF manage to put these designated criminal elements or alleged criminal elements away from the party, then I think there would be a room for negotiation. But if negotiation is ever going to happen, there is another very important actor that needs to be part of it. That is the Amhara regional government, and the people, the representatives or the governing body of the Amhara regional government needs to engage in that, needs to be seated at that negotiating table, because it has been victimized by the provocation of the TPLF. It has been, it is a neighbor, and so whatever conflict is happening, it is going to be affected, and therefore, in addition to the historic quest for getting back the annexed territories of Wolqayt and Raya, the Amhara regional government is an important actor that needs to be present at the negotiating table if there is going to be a negotiation ever.
Therefore, you are saying that there might be slight room for negotiation.
Yes, I think it's not 100% closed.
It's not 100%.
But it's up to the TPLF.
Yeah.
And
openly, Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, said to demand negotiation in the course of the war is a kind of military tactic, he said. Anyway, what will be next, we will see in the future. Let me rush to my next question. I think we need to raise some important point here. And the point is, now the Ethiopian National Defense Force, Amhara Special Force, and Amhara Militia are jointly undertaking military operation against TPLF junta in Tigray regional state. So the point is, my question is, do you think that the participation of Amhara Special Force and Amhara Militia is fair?
Well, before that, before going into the participation of other actors, let's underscore the parties to the conflict, the major parties to the conflict. On the one hand, like I said before, it is the federal government. On the other hand, it is the TPLF.
Thank you.
As a group. And both sides have their issues. What we know is what we were told. Now, particularly we don't have information, that much of information flow from Tigray. So, in addition, if we have to listen to anybody, we probably better listen to the government, our government. And so what the government said is the TPLF attacked the Ethiopian National Defense Forces Northern Command. And that claim of the federal government was indirectly confirmed by the leader of the TPLF when he declared that they have at their disposal the majority of weaponry of the Northern Command. How did they get their hands to it? Probably it shows the attack or the alleged attack probably is true. In that case, we are having two separate entities, two separate centers of power in one state, in one country. And that having two separate and rival powers in one country shows the violation of sovereignty of the country, right? And therefore, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't intend to get into technical legal matters, but from a political point of view, a government that cannot control the whole territory, that cannot rule over the whole people, that does not have jurisdiction over all people and all territory, has violated sovereignty. And as a federal government, it is, I think, necessary for the federal government to engage militarily, even though it is unfortunate and even though it is sad that nobody wants military engagements. However, because it has to protect, the Ethiopian National Defense Force has to protect itself, and if it is one unit in different parts, and when part of it in one part of the country is attacked by an entity that doesn't have the power to do so, I think the defense forces may have to defend themselves, and as a chief of the army, that's how it was done. So that is how it is. However, the attack happened there in Tigray region, and the confrontations happened there. However, it was not contained in there. Some elements of some parts of the Northern Army or the Northern Command are in different parts of the north. Yeah. Some of them are in the Amhara region. Yeah. And I think the attack or the confrontation took out of hand and came into the Amhara region. And like, you know, whatever, we may not like it, or whatever attitude we may have towards special forces or regional special forces or regional militia forces, they are there for this very reason, to protect the people and the region from outside attacks and internal instability, right? And so I think, in my understanding, that's how the Amhara special forces or the Amhara militia have engaged in an attempt to safeguard the people and the people of the Amhara region and the sovereignty, quote-unquote sovereignty of the Amhara region as well. But also, the Amhara are parts of Ethiopia, right? We are Ethiopians. And we have the National Defense Forces to protect us from forces outside or inside. But that doesn't mean, for instance, people and the government of the Sidama state, the Harari in Somali, Ethiopian Somali state, and the Gambela and Benishangul, everybody has been showing support to the Ethiopian National Defense Forces. Yeah. And it is the same as what the Amhara regional government is doing. However, because part of the conflict or the confrontation is happening in the soil of the Amhara.
Indeed, it's spread to Amhara region.
Yes, yeah. So it is forced, the Amhara National Forces the Amhara special forces and the militia is forced to engage on the side of the Ethiopian National Forces. This could have happened. The Somali special forces could have engaged with another element on the side of the National Defense Forces if the conflict was in Somalia or in Oromia or in other states. So I think it should be seen from that perspective, and we should not miss the point that the problem or the confrontation or the conflict is happening between the Ethiopian National Defense Forces and the TPLF as a group.
Okay. Many says the federal government military intervention against TPLF junta in the state is late. Do you agree with this point? Let us hear your argument here.
Well, from the upholding rule of law point of view, yes, it is late. A government is supposed to uphold rule of law. A government is not supposed to decry or blame an entity, a subnational entity, of creating this much havoc and do nothing. Right? What was happening is, whatever happens, the government will tell us the TPLF did this, the TPLF did that, but the federal government did nothing to that effect. And so if you see it from the rule of law point of view, if you see it from maintaining law and order, then you can say it is too late, a little bit too late. But then when you see it from a political point of view, politics is the art of the possible.
The attainable.
Yeah, the art of the attainable.
Yeah.
And the TPLF forces concentrated their power, their forces in one area and created a safe haven for themselves. When the new administration, the new government was trying to create a semblance of stability in the country. And so probably it was about timing. But in my opinion, the Prime Minister, I don't think he had any intention of engaging in violent confrontation with the TPLF. Nor do I think he expected to be provoked in such magnitude. The only time we heard him talking of war is when he warned Iskandar Naga and the Balderus movement and their protests or whatever they were doing in protesting the Addis Ababa administration. That is, in my as far as I know, yeah, that is the only time I hear him talk about war or warning people that there will be war. I never heard, he even told repeatedly, saying he did not expect to go to war with the TPLF. So one, it was an issue of timing. Two, it was an issue of abilities. Three, the TPLF was the master of everything in Ethiopia, and you cannot just engage this group right out of right out of whenever you get power. I think he needed time to clean house and to get ready. And I think whatever is happening now is somehow a miscalculation on the part of the TPLF. Probably they didn't think the house was clean. So, yeah, it depends.
We are being run out of time, Mr. Antony. Let me give you 2 minutes or so. What do you speculate about the future?
From the political perspective, I think the way particularly the TPLF is trying to frame the issue is that the federal government is trying to subjugate the TPLF and deprive it of sovereignty over Tigray. And they try to transfer there is transference from TPLF to the people of Tigray in the minds of the TPLFites. And I think, I hope this conflict will end soon, the operation will be successful, and bring those who are guilty to, or those who are suspected to justice, and then there will be an all-encompassing dialogue between different political factions, different political parties, different political groups in Ethiopia. And the fact that the TPLF has brought this regional sovereignty and the federalist forces and the unitarist, quote unquote, which doesn't exist in my belief, bringing that to the fore would, I think, be important for the negotiations, right? And I think federalism is on the table. I don't think Prime Minister Abiy is on the side of those who try to adjust or modify this federalism. I don't think Prime Minister Abiy is on the side of those who are trying to amend the constitution. I don't think he would actively engage in those activities, but this conflict, if there is anything, conflict as a social change, it has brought these issues to the table, and whenever the dialogue starts after this confrontation ends, the dialogue would be more comprehensive, and that is my hope and my wish.
Yeah, we are run out of time. We have to close our program here. Mr. Antenet Tesfaun, lecturer of political science and international relations in the University of Bahar Dar. Thank you for your critical insights.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dear viewers, today's ATV special had focused on the latest confrontation between TPLF, Tigrayan People Liberation Front junta, and the federal government of Ethiopia. And we wish all the best for Ethiopians, because Ethiopians are still hungered of peace, development, and democracy. Let the air of peace blow to Ethiopia. Let prosperity reign on the soils of Ethiopia. And let rule of law and democracy be the manifestation of this country. Many thanks for watching. And please do stay with the rest of the programs. Goodbye.